The airport was alive with noise and movement, a place where stories began and ended every single second. But amidst the announcements echoing over loudspeakers, the hurried footsteps of passengers dragging their suitcases, and the bittersweet goodbyes happening at every corner, one woman sat quietly on a bench near gate 24. Her face was pale with exhaustion, her eyes heavy with the kind of sadness that only comes from years of carrying too much alone. She was clutching a worn-out handbag, the only thing she could afford after years of paying bills, skipping meals, and sacrificing her own needs just to keep a small roof over her little daughter's head. She was a single mom, barely 30, but life had carved lines on her face that made her look older. And in that moment, with her hair falling loosely around her tired face, she looked like someone who had fought every battle alone and didn't know how many more she could endure. Before I continue, I want to pause and ask you something. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the beauty of life giving us unexpected miracles, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Fuels. Your support helps us keep telling these real, emotional stories that touch hearts across the world. The woman's name was Sarah. She hadn't planned to be at this airport today. Life had cornered her again, the way it always did. Her daughter Emily had fallen sick, and the hospital expenses had drained every penny she had managed to save. A distant relative had promised to help, but they lived across the country. So Sarah found herself at the airport, clutching 2 tickets she had bought with borrowed money, praying the trip would bring healing for her child and maybe, just maybe, some hope for herself too. Sarah's life had been nothing short of a battlefield. After her husband abandoned her years ago, leaving her alone with a newborn baby, she had learned the true weight of survival. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to cover rent and food. She often went hungry so that Emily could eat. She patched her shoes when they tore, instead of buying new ones. Nights were spent crying silently into her pillow, careful not to wake the little girl sleeping beside her. Yet through it all, she had never given up, because giving up would mean leaving her daughter's future in ruins, and that was something Sarah could never do. And then, it happened. As she sat in the waiting area, staring blankly at the floor, her eyes suddenly lifted, and froze. A man was standing only a few feet away, adjusting the strap of his briefcase. His dark hair had streaks of silver now, but the sharp jawline, the confident posture, and those familiar eyes, they hadn't changed. For a moment, Sarah thought her tired mind was playing tricks on her. But no, it was real. The man standing there was Daniel. Daniel had been her first love, her only love, the boy she had once planned her entire future with. They had met in high school, shared dreams under the stars, and believed in a forever that never came true. Life had pulled them apart in cruel ways. His family had moved overseas, and Sarah's world had collapsed soon after with her father's death and the sudden responsibilities that fell on her shoulders. They had lost touch completely. She never imagined she would see him again, especially not here, in an airport full of strangers. Sarah's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear, to hide the worn-out clothes she wore, the old handbag that screamed of poverty, the exhaustion etched on her face. She was no longer the girl Daniel had known. She was a single mother with nothing but struggles in her story. She didn't want him to see her like this. But fate has a way of ignoring what we want. Daniel turned, and their eyes met. For a few seconds, time froze. The noise of the airport melted away, and all that existed was the memory of 2 souls who had once known each other better than anyone else. But Sarah quickly lowered her gaze, gripping her bag tightly, as if by looking away she could erase the moment. She hoped he would walk past. She hoped he wouldn't recognize her. But then she heard footsteps approaching. Daniel walked closer, slowly, almost cautiously, as if afraid this was a dream that might vanish. When he stopped in front of her, Sarah forced a small, polite smile, the kind you give to someone you used to know but don't anymore. She expected him to nod and leave. But he didn't. He simply looked at her, his eyes full of something she couldn't place: surprise, recognition, maybe even pain. What Sarah didn't know was that Daniel had been searching for something too. He had built a successful life, a career, a name people respected. But despite everything he had achieved, he carried an emptiness inside him, a loneliness no amount of money or success could fill. Seeing Sarah again, after all these years, felt like fate had given him a second chance he never dared to ask for. The minutes that followed were a blur of emotions Sarah could hardly process. She tried to keep her distance, but Daniel's kindness disarmed her. He noticed Emily, who clung shyly to her mother's arm, and his heart softened instantly. He crouched down to the child's level, speaking gently, his eyes lighting up when she smiled back at him. Sarah felt something stir inside her, a mix of fear, hope, and longing she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. As the hours at the airport stretched, Sarah realized something she had forgotten: the power of being seen, truly seen. For so long, she had been invisible to the world, just another tired face in a crowd. But with Daniel's presence, she felt the weight of her struggles ease, if only a little. He listened when she spoke. He noticed the tremble in her voice when she talked about Emily's illness. And most importantly, he didn't look at her with pity, he looked at her as if she was still the same girl who once owned his heart. And then came the twist Sarah had never expected. She learned that Daniel had never married. Life had given him everything except a family. He had always carried the memory of her, and now, standing in front of her daughter, he felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just the past calling, it was the future whispering possibilities he had long given up on. By the time flights were announced and people began boarding, Sarah knew her life had changed in ways she couldn't yet name. She had walked into the airport as a struggling single mom, carrying only the weight of survival. But she was walking out with something far more powerful, the fragile but undeniable spark of hope. And sometimes, hope is all it takes for miracles to begin.